All right, my babies, this should be an interesting video. We make decisions versus we discuss them with ourselves. This piggybacks on the whole every opinion we have is a form of judgment because it's going to be biased, right? It's an opinion. So, do we really make decisions or do we discuss them with ourselves and they become a part of us, basically, right? That makes sense. Do we make decisions versus we discuss them with ourselves? Uh, I really understand the value of decision making, but I'm going to take you back to a story that my dad was talking to me once before. And it's funny because I actually mentioned it in a lot of my videos. Are you actually thinking or are you entertaining a thought? Right? And it's very often we find ourselves pondering a decision for a long period of time. But the relevant decisions of our lives really happen like this. And what do I mean relevant decision in our lives? If you're walking in the streets and a dog is basically a dog shows you his teeth or her teeth and is running towards you. Do you make a decision? You don't. You just fucking run or you attack or you kind of like you just get into a previous set state depending on what kind of person you are. If you're driving a car and a car kind of like crosses in front of you instantly and you're like you either put on the brakes, you swerve. These are not decisions you make, but they're decisions that were made at the moment by you. And so his reasoning, my dad's reasoning, was more towards any important decision, any decision that is of importance in our life, has always been a decision that is made like this. And now I understand that we really preset ourselves, we calibrate ourselves a certain kind of way for certain situations. And sometimes we're completely unprepared because it's fight, flight, or freeze, right? Like it's one of these three things. When we're prepared, technically that's the fight or flight, right? Because like if we're prepared through running, then we know if we sense danger, we run. But if we're prepared through training, then if we sense danger, we run for it if it's worth it, naturally. If we're unprepared, we freeze. We don't know what to fucking do. Shock and all that good stuff. Traumatic crap, man. Like a lot of things happen to us. Life, nature kind of like seems to want to, nature seems to always be trying to kill us or trying to put us in situation. It's like everything about nature is kind of like, and no, careful, you might die, versus like, hey, you're alive, right? We always, I think people forgot that, like, it's very easy to kind of like not be alive. I think the reason we take it for granted is because we kind of like built society and built buildings and protected ourselves. We're no longer living in the rawness of things, but nature is still exactly the same way. Whether it's the desert, whether it's the fucking, I don't know, snowy mountains somewhere, is always the case, and we kind of have to adapt to it. But the idea that we make a decision, that we make decisions, that brings with us like who is making the decision, right? And the critical thinking part that I was like talking about earlier is because like did you really think about a decision for 3 days, or did you already make the decision but spend 3 days like marinating whether the decision is right or wrong, or whether you want to do it or not, or whether you're scared enough or not, or brave enough to do it or not, like all these kinds of things. And I think like we could relate because a lot of times we say I'm going to start waking up early. Well, we don't really. It's because you're not the one who made the decision. The true decision that was made is like sleep. Don't worry about it, regardless of why it's made. And if we wake up early all the time, I challenge anyone to be like, I'm going to sleep in. You're going to find yourself waking up early because you kind of like are imposing something. Something's being imposed on you by your ego, by the opinion you have of yourself which is allowing you to think that you're making a decision. So the verses that we discuss them with ourselves. Now, this discussion thing goes back to the negotiation that I always talk about, because you're always negotiating with yourself. Because like the deeper part of you, or the true part of you, that's not really exposed to the world, or not really, because when I say not really exposed to the world, it's because kind of like that's the preparatory part. You're preparing everything that you prepare in your thought, every throughout the day. You're not really conscious about what your mind is processing, but those processes are really your go-to. It's not the empowering motivational speech that you go through and you feel like energetic. Like I remember when we went to 300. I don't know if you guys know the movie, but like after I watched the movie, I remember like all of us like just wanted to pick a fight, wanted to go to the gym, wanted to be like brave men of like whatever. Like, all of us were just right. The second day it was like back to normal. It was a fucking decent movie that hyped everyone up. Like almost everyone that went there was always super fucking like excited, uh, aggressive, energetic, horny, even like all this stuff. But anyways, all the decisions I made that night went to waste basically. Well, I always went to the gym, but I didn't exercise extra hard the next day. Maybe I did a bit, but anyways, I just say a bit because there's some lingering behind it. But here, the discussion with ourselves is because like that's how you prepare. That's how you harmonize your feelings and your thoughts with your true self, with the truth, right? Because like I am not this person. This person is a part of me. I am not this body. This body is a part of me. Is a connection to me. The mind is a connection to me because your mind is your connection to consciousness, and the things that you see are imposed by your environment. So you're always kind of like trying to connect whether they're relevant or not, make sense or not. And sometimes you get stuck in them, right? Because you would believe your environment is there to be for the future, or it will repeat itself enough times for you to be like, what the fuck? But the discussion we have when like there's a decision to be made, what exactly are we kind of like discussing to make the decision? How are we approaching our intuition in terms of the negotiation? The reason I'm asking this question is simply because I read this note, and we make decisions versus we discuss them with ourselves. I think it's very pretentious when we feel like we've made a decision. I really think it's easier for us to discuss them with ourselves, but the reason we discuss is to understand why they're already made. Because, like, it really is like a decision is made faster than we would like to agree. And at least for me, I know most of the time, like, I kind of like simmer with the decision simply because I want to be comfortable with it more than I would want to kind of like I wouldn't approach it. The decision is made. Its behavior towards the action towards that decision are completely different than what I'm discussing right now. The decision is made. I'm the one, not the one who made it. Because anytime I'm the one who made the decision, I kind of go and deplete energy until it's no longer something I'm doing. I just get it out of my system. But if it's a decision that's actually made, what I end up doing is kind of figure out why it's made, or like what prompted it to be a valid thing in my mind, and why it doesn't make sense for me to kind of like contemplate the actions I would be doing, or attempting different behaviors or changing different behaviors in order to satisfy this decision that I made. And that goes back to the negotiation, but I'm no longer negotiating. I think the discussion that I'm doing is more of an act of trust, because you're kind of trusting that the decision was made, but you still don't, that the decision was made for a reason that resonates with you. But you're discussing it just to have a clear idea and a clear understanding of why this resonance exists in the first place. And I think with this, we could actually like engage with friction differently, because sometimes we actually make decisions, but there's a lot of things that we have to go through in order for us to kind of like start moving start creating the environment where this decision could live properly. That's the action that we take. And it feels like with us discussing the decision with ourselves, we're accepting the decision is already made, and that it's made because we trust it's harmonizing with our true selves. But whether we take it or not is really just looking and going like, is this the true self that is this truly my true self, and it resonates with my values and my principles, or is something that I think it resonates with my values? So I just took it to a deeper level because I allowed us to create, like, there's the ego that's already there, and then there's what I think I am. Because, like, you never know who you are. You're always trying to understand what you are, getting to know yourself. And it comes down to how, like, your values kind of like through the discussion with yourself, you actually elaborate on how it complements you. And if it does, then you basically verify it, and there's no longer any friction because you're completely in tune with the decision and why it's made. And if it doesn't, it's an opportunity for us to realize basically the core that allowed this to consider itself a valid decision to be made. I think that's definitely a much better way to approach it. I would want to watch this video again because I really went through a couple of things in my head. I don't know about you guys, but it's a video.